No one becomes victorious by being soft. You think you're being kind, you think you're being loving, but in reality you're surrendering your strength, your purpose, your life to the whims of others. When you fail to set boundaries, you become a puppet, controlled by the strings of others' expectations and demands. You constantly find yourself putting the needs of others before your own, as if you have no right to say no, as if your time, your energy, and your emotions belong to everyone around you. You are afraid of conflict, afraid of disappointing people, afraid that if you set a limit, they will think less of you. But here's the truth. Without boundaries, you sacrifice not only your own well-being, but also your ability to serve others effectively. If you are always bending to the will of others, you will eventually break. You are no longer helping others. You're enabling them to continue using you without regard for your needs. In the workplace, this lack of boundaries can lead to burnout. You say yes to every task, take on every project, and work yourself to the bone in an effort to please your boss or colleagues. You feel compelled to do so because you believe that setting limits will make you seem uncooperative or lazy. But when you give your all, over and over again, without asking for respect in return, you lose sight of your own value. You become a tool for others' agendas, instead of a strong, focused individual pursuing your own goals. You may think that accommodating every request will make you liked, but all it does is drain your energy and rob you of your personal power. At home, you may fall into the same pattern with family and friends. Your boundaries vanish when you are afraid of conflict, afraid of upsetting the people you love, so you find yourself constantly rearranging your schedule, putting your own needs on hold to cater to their every whim. They ask for a favor, and you comply, even when it pushes you past your limits. You fear that if you say no, they will feel hurt or angry, but in doing so, you are enabling unhealthy dynamics. Instead of teaching them to respect you, you teach them that you can always be relied upon no matter the cost to your own well-being. The most insidious consequence of a lack of boundaries is the erosion of self-respect. When you allow others to walk all over you, to demand things of you without considering your needs, you lose sight of your own worth. You begin to see yourself as someone who exists only to serve, to give, to please, without ever taking the time to nurture your own soul. Over time, this creates a void within you, a feeling that you are not important, that your needs are secondary to everyone else's. You may try to ignore it, but deep down you know that this lack of boundaries is slowly eating away at your identity. But here's the good news. You have the power to change this. You can start setting boundaries today, and in doing so you will reclaim your strength. Boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are the walls that protect the treasure within. They are the line that says, I will give, but I will also receive. Boundaries are the foundation upon which respect and healthy relationships are built. They show others that you value yourself, that you have a purpose, and that you are worthy of care, time, and attention. When you set limits, you don't just protect yourself. You create the space to be the best version of yourself for others. So, stop fearing boundaries, start building them, and watch how your life transforms when you begin to stand tall, firm, and strong in the truth of who you are. People-pleasing, the desire to avoid conflict at all costs. People-pleasing is an insidious trap, one that often begins with a desire to be liked, loved, or accepted. But it becomes much more than that. It becomes a way of life, a constant need to say yes to everyone, regardless of the toll it takes on your own well-being. You may not even realize it, but each time you say yes when you really want to say no, you are sacrificing a piece of yourself. You begin to think that by constantly fulfilling the requests of others, you are being generous, kind, or even righteous. But the truth is, people-pleasing feeds off your fear of conflict, your inability to set boundaries, and your desperate desire for approval. It's a cycle that leaves you feeling exhausted, resentful, and disconnected from your own needs and desires. At first, saying yes may feel harmless. A colleague asks you to take on extra work and you agree, not wanting to appear lazy or uncooperative. A friend invites you to a social gathering and you don't want to hurt their feelings, so you say yes even though you would rather spend the night at home. A family member asks for help with something that's inconvenient for you, and without hesitation you agree because you fear their disappointment or anger. But the more you say yes, the more your own time, energy, and peace of mind are drained. You're so focused on meeting the expectations of others that you lose sight of your own needs and desires. Your yes becomes a chain that binds you to the whims of everyone around you, and you lose the ability to say no without feeling guilty. People-pleasing is a form of emotional self-neglect. Every time you put someone else's needs ahead of your own, you create a small, quiet sacrifice. It starts with one small yes, then another and another, until you find yourself caught in a web of obligations, overwhelmed by the weight of others' expectations. The problem with this is that the more you please others, the less you are able to please yourself. You become disconnected from your own values, your own dreams, and your own desires. You end up living for the approval of others, even though their approval can never fully satisfy you. You may momentarily feel good about yourself when you make someone else happy, but that fleeting satisfaction is soon replaced by resentment, burnout, and a deep sense of emptiness. You might think that saying yes to everyone will make you popular, appreciated, or respected. After all, who doesn't want to be the person everyone can rely on? The problem is that people-pleasing often leads to being taken for granted. People begin to expect your compliance, and they may even stop appreciating your efforts altogether. The more you say yes, the more people expect from you, and the less likely they are to recognize the toll it takes on you. The result is a vicious cycle in which you continue to give, but you receive little in return, not just in terms of material goods, but in terms of emotional and psychological support. You end up feeling like a resource to others rather than a valued individual. Perhaps the most damaging aspect of people-pleasing is the loss of peace of mind. When you are constantly trying to please others, your internal sense of peace is compromised. You're never truly present in the moment because you're always thinking about the next favor you need to do, the next request you need to fulfill. You become anxious, overburdened, and stressed, always juggling the needs of others without regard for your own emotional and mental health. The more you say yes, the less you feel in control of your own life. You become like a leaf blown by the wind, carried in whichever direction the requests of others take you, losing your sense of direction, purpose, and inner peace along the way. People-pleasing is also a barrier to authentic relationships. True relationships are based on mutual respect and understanding, not on one person constantly bending to the will of the other. When you are always saying yes, you may think you are being a good friend, partner, or colleague, but in reality, you're not giving the other person the opportunity to truly know you. You are hiding your true feelings, your true needs, in an effort to avoid conflict or rejection. You may think you are helping others by saying yes, but what you are really doing is building walls between yourself and them, walls that prevent genuine connection and understanding. The truth is, people-pleasing is rooted in fear. The fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others, fear of conflict. But living in this fear is not freedom, it is a prison. It is time to recognize that you are not obligated to say yes to every request that comes your way. You have the right to say no without feeling guilty. Setting boundaries and prioritizing your own needs is not selfish. It is necessary for your mental, emotional, and physical health. Saying no when you need to is a powerful act of self-respect. It allows you to show up for others in a more meaningful, genuine way because you can only give from a place of abundance, not depletion. So let go of the fear that drives your people-pleasing and reclaim your peace, your time, and your authenticity. It's time to stop living for the approval of others and start living for yourself. Conflict is a natural part of human relationships, whether personal or professional. But for many, the mere thought of confrontation sends waves of anxiety, fear, and discomfort. As a result, rather than addressing issues directly, they choose to ignore, suppress, or avoid them altogether. They hope that by avoiding the conflict it will somehow resolve itself, or that time will heal the wounds. But what they fail to realize is that avoiding conflict doesn't make the issue go away. It allows it to fester and grow, often to the point where it becomes a much larger problem than it would have been if confronted head-on. The avoidance of conflict often stems from a deep-rooted fear of discomfort, specifically the discomfort that comes with disagreement, confrontation, or potential rejection. The idea of facing someone who may be upset, angry, or disappointed can be overwhelming. So you tell yourself that it's easier to keep the peace by sweeping things under the rug, by pretending everything is fine. But this avoidance doesn't bring peace. It creates a false sense of calm that is only temporary. The underlying tension remains, and it often builds over time, leading to frustration, resentment, and emotional distance between you and the people involved. The more you avoid confrontation, the more that unspoken conflict grows like a ticking time bomb. The problem with letting issues fester is that they never really go away. The feelings that are pushed down, whether it's anger, disappointment, or hurt, don't just disappear. They stay buried, simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the next trigger to bring them back to the surface with greater force. When you avoid necessary confrontations, you end up carrying around unresolved emotions that weigh heavily on your heart and mind. The longer you avoid the issue, the more complex it becomes. What could have been a simple, straightforward conversation turns into an emotionally charged, intense ordeal that could have been avoided with earlier intervention. In relationships, whether with a partner, friend, or family member, avoiding conflict creates a dangerous pattern. When you never address the things that bother you, it becomes increasingly difficult to communicate openly and honestly. Over time, you may feel disconnected from the people you care about because you're never able to voice your true thoughts and feelings. It becomes a silent dance where both parties are aware that something isn't right but are too afraid to confront it. This avoidance may even cause the other person to feel neglected, unimportant, or misunderstood, even if that's not your intention. What starts as a small issue can snowball into a deep divide that is harder to mend with each passing day. Professionally, avoiding conflict can have even more damaging consequences. In the workplace, issues of performance, expectations, and communication can often go unaddressed because no one wants to rock the boat. If you fail to address a disagreement with a colleague or avoid discussing a problem with your boss, you create a culture of miscommunication and frustration. What could have been a constructive conversation about work processes, deadlines, or personal boundaries turns into an unspoken problem that affects the quality of the work and the morale of the team. By avoiding the conflict, you not only lose an opportunity to resolve the issue, but also risk damaging your reputation, trust, and relationships at work. Another issue with avoiding conflict is that it often leads to passive-aggressive behavior. When you refuse to confront someone directly, you may find yourself expressing your frustration in indirect, covert ways, through sarcasm, avoidance, or even small cutting remarks that aren't immediately recognized as signs of deeper resentment. While these behaviors may provide a temporary sense of relief, they only prolong the conflict and make it harder to resolve. Rather than addressing the issue directly, you create an atmosphere of confusion and tension where the other person may not understand the underlying cause of your frustration, and you become more entrenched in your own anger. Passive-aggressive behavior only reinforces the cycle of avoidance and leaves both parties feeling misunderstood and frustrated. Avoiding conflict also prevents growth. Conflict, when handled properly, is a catalyst for change, understanding, and deeper connection. When we confront issues, we have the opportunity to understand each other's perspectives, set clear expectations, and resolve misunderstandings. The act of addressing an issue directly and respectfully strengthens the relationship and builds trust. By avoiding conflict, you deny yourself and others the chance to learn, grow, and evolve through the challenges that life presents. In doing so, you rob yourself of the opportunity to become a more effective communicator, a better listener, and a more resilient individual. Growth happens in the tension, in the discomfort, in the very place where conflict exists. What makes avoidance so dangerous is the long-term effects it has on your mental and emotional health. The constant act of suppressing your feelings takes a significant toll on your inner peace. You become consumed by thoughts of what could have been said, what should have been addressed, and the possible outcomes you imagine. This mental burden causes unnecessary stress and anxiety. The energy spent on avoiding the conflict could be better used on solving the issue or letting go of it altogether. But when you let it fester, you find yourself constantly rehashing the situation in your mind, creating scenarios of worst-case outcomes that only add to your stress and emotional exhaustion. Finally, the avoidance of conflict ultimately teaches you to tolerate things you should never tolerate. When you avoid confrontation, you enable unhealthy behaviors to continue unchecked. By not standing up for yourself, you allow others to treat you in ways that aren't respectful or fair. Over time, this builds a pattern of self-neglect and disempowerment. You may start to believe that you don't deserve to express your feelings or that your concerns aren't important. This not only erodes your self-worth, but also sets a dangerous precedent for others to disregard your needs and feelings. Avoiding conflict, therefore, doesn't protect you. It makes you a passive participant in your own life. The truth is, avoiding conflict doesn't bring peace. It creates a false sense of security that is fragile and temporary. Real peace is found in the ability to face challenges head-on, to address issues directly, and to resolve problems with strength and integrity. If you want to cultivate true peace in your life, you must learn to embrace conflict, not as something to be feared, but as an opportunity for growth, understanding, and resolution. It is through conflict that we discover our boundaries, our needs, and our capacity for empathy. By avoiding it, you close the door to these powerful opportunities. So stop running from confrontation. Stand tall, face the issues with courage, and experience the freedom that comes with resolving conflict in a healthy, direct way. There is a quiet and insidious paralysis that often comes when we are unable to make decisions with conviction. We find ourselves standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take, while the opinions and judgments of others swirl around us like a fog. The fear of what others will think or how they will react creates a wall of indecision, trapping us in a state of constant uncertainty. It's a deep-rooted struggle, one that comes from the belief that our choices must be validated or approved by others, and that our own sense of judgment isn't enough. Over time, this fear weakens our ability to make firm, confident decisions and compromises our power to lead our own lives. The inability to make firm decisions often begins with the smallest of doubts. You find yourself weighing every possible reaction, every potential outcome, as if the world's approval rests on your every move. A simple decision, such as what to eat for dinner or what movie to watch, can become a battle in your mind. But it doesn't stop there. The stakes grow higher as you face more significant choices. Decisions about your career, relationships, or personal value. Each time you falter, you begin to question your own ability to choose with certainty. You allow the voices of others to overpower your inner wisdom, and this habit of second-guessing yourself becomes ingrained, creating a deep sense of vulnerability and insecurity.